Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. It wasn't snowing when I left the apartment, but the clouds were thick and low, hanging like they were waiting to burst. I clutched the gift bags in both hands, the kind with twisted red handles and shiny silver bows, and double-checked the tag on the biggest one. To Dad, Merry Christmas. Love, El. The drive was long and quiet. No music. Just the sound of the heater humming and my own heartbeat, steady but uneasy. I was nervous, though I didn't know why. I hadn't missed a single Christmas in my life. Not even when I had the flu at 13 and Grandma swore ginger tea could cure anything. Not even when I had finals, deadlines, bills. I always showed up. Always on time. Always with a smile. When I pulled into the driveway, there were already 5 cars parked outside. I recognized them all. My brother's oversized truck. My sister's new SUV. The neighbor's ancient sedan that always wheezed when it reversed. The porch light was on. I balanced the gifts awkwardly in one arm and rang the bell with the other, even though I knew the door would be unlocked. It always was on Christmas. No one answered. I let myself in. The smell of ham and cinnamon hit me first. Then came the sound of laughter, soft, scattered from the dining room. I paused to brush snow from my coat, trying to collect myself. Smile, I told myself. Smile and walk in like you're wanted. When I rounded the corner into the dining room, they were all already seated. My parents. My siblings. Their spouses. Even Uncle Ray, who usually only came for dessert. There were candles lit. Wine glasses full. Plates already half served. And not a single eye lifted to meet mine. I stood in the doorway, still holding the gifts. It was my mother who spoke first. "Oh," she said, her voice tight. "You made it." I nodded slowly. Of course I did. Then I looked around the table. There were 10 chairs. All full. Except, there wasn't one for me. I looked again, thinking maybe someone had moved theirs. Maybe someone had gotten up to get napkins or wine or... No. Every place was set. And my chair, the one I always sat in, next to the window and across from the fireplace, was already taken. By my brother's new girlfriend. She looked up at me with wide eyes, then looked away quickly, embarrassed. She didn't move. I waited for someone to say something. Anything. But no one did. My father cleared his throat and lifted his fork. My sister poured more wine into her glass. My brother looked at his plate like it had something written on it. Finally, my mom spoke again. "We didn't think you'd be coming this year." Her tone was flat. Like this was just another minor scheduling error. "I told you I was," I replied, voice barely above a whisper. She sighed like I was making a fuss. "Well, it's a full table. Maybe you can eat in the kitchen? It's just for tonight. Don't make this a thing." The gift bag slipped a little in my grip. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. Laughed once. Short and sharp, the kind that doesn't sound human. "I brought dessert," I said, voice cracking as I set the gifts gently on the side table. "Hope no one's allergic to peppermint." No one responded. I stood there a moment longer, waiting for an apology, a gesture, a miracle. None came. So I turned around, walked back through the living room, past the framed photos I wasn't in, past the stockings with names carefully stitched, mine replaced with one that read "Guest." Outside, the wind had picked up. The clouds broke open. Snow began to fall in soft, lazy flakes. I opened my car door, sat behind the wheel, and stared at the house. Inside, they were eating without me. The snow clung to the windshield like frostbitten lace. I didn't turn the engine on right away. Just sat there in the dark, my hands resting uselessly in my lap, the keys still in my coat pocket. The silence was heavier now, filled with the clinking of silverware and muffled laughter coming from inside the house. It felt distant, like I was watching it all from underwater. I stared at the front window. The curtains glowed amber from the lights inside. I could see silhouettes moving, heads thrown back in laughter, arms reaching across the table, wine glasses raised. You'd never know someone was missing. You'd never know I had once belonged in that room. I reached up to wipe the fog from the glass and noticed the slow, perfect patterns the snowflakes were forming on the windshield, like little spirals of indifference. Nature, unaware of humiliation, beautiful even in its coldness. That's when it hit me. This wasn't the first time. It wasn't the first time they'd excluded me. It was just the first time they hadn't bothered to pretend they weren't. Last Thanksgiving, I got the text the morning of, "We're keeping it small this year. Just immediate family." My sister's bridal shower? They told me 2 days before, after the invites had already gone out. "You're hard to shop for anyway. We figured you wouldn't mind." My father's retirement party? They said it was last minute, just a work thing. Found out later they'd been planning it for months. Every time I convinced myself it wasn't personal. They're just forgetful. I don't live close. I'm the independent one. But independence doesn't mean invisible. It doesn't mean unwanted. I pulled out my phone and opened the family group chat. Scrolled back through months of messages. Photos I wasn't in. Conversations I was barely part of. My replies, mostly hearts, thumbs up, supportive emojis. Always trying to be the cheerleader. "That's amazing, so happy for you. You're gonna crush it. Congrats, love you guys." I scrolled further. When was the last time someone said those things to me? I couldn't find it. My phone buzzed suddenly. A new text. Not from family. It was from an old college classmate, Jenna. "Hey, I know this is random, but are you still doing strategy consulting? Got something I'd love to run by you." I blinked at the message, confused. Jenna? We hadn't spoken in over a year. We were friendly, not close. She worked in corporate development now, one of those high-up roles with corner offices and tailored blazers. I reread the message twice. Still doing strategy consulting. I hadn't in months. Projects dried up. I never told anyone. No one in my family ever asked. I clicked on her profile out of habit. Her last post was a group photo at some networking event. In the caption, she'd written, "We're looking to bring in quiet leaders, people who've been underestimated their whole lives. If that's you, let's talk." My hand trembled as I typed a reply. "Hey, I'm still doing consulting. What's the project?" She responded instantly. "It's confidential, but I'll call you tomorrow." You were the first name that came to mind. The first name. Not a fallback. Not an afterthought. The snow thickened around the tires. I stayed parked in the dark, my phone screen still glowing. Jenna's message opened like a small, warm flame in a frozen place. Inside that house, they were carving ham and toasting wine and laughing at stories that always ended with me being the odd one. The serious one. The one who thinks she's better than everyone else. But out here in the cold, something else had just begun. Not revenge. Not anger. Something sharper. Recognition. The call came at 9:12 a.m. I was still in bed, the curtains drawn, a dull gray light slipping across the floor. My phone buzzed against the nightstand, the screen flashing a name I hadn't seen in years. Jenna Park. I answered with the groggy voice of someone who hadn't really slept, just laid still for hours, letting silence replace rest. "Hey, Jenna," I said, trying to sound sharper than I felt. She didn't waste time. Jenna was always like that, brisk, confident, the kind of woman who made coffee nervous. "I'm just gonna jump in," she said. "We've got something in motion. Quiet for now, but big. Cross-sector project. Development, tech, distribution. We need someone who can cut through clutter. Find the red flags before they explode. Build a strategy from the ground up." I sat up straighter. "Why me?" I asked. There was a pause on the line, not hesitation, more like consideration. Then she said, "I remember you. You didn't talk much, but when you did, people listened. And someone else told me recently, she was always the smart one in her family." My breath caught. Smart one. Not nice one. Not quiet one. Not the one who got out. Smart. That word hadn't belonged to me in a long time. It used to. Back in school, before I started shrinking. Before I learned that success in my family meant staying in your lane, smiling politely, and letting the louder ones take credit. I had an academic scholarship, top of my class. But my family said, "She's just book smart. Not like her brother, he's got people skills." I bit my lip. "I haven't consulted in a while." "You will now," Jenna said. "If you want it." I asked her for the basics. The client wasn't a single business. It was a development group, quiet investors, real estate, corporate partnerships, and local zoning leverage. The project? A massive regional venture in early development. Commercial space, tech logistics, municipal bidding. Still in the quiet phase, but once it launched, it'd make headlines. "I want you in early," Jenna said. "Think less, help us fix this, and more, build the framework before anyone messes it up." My heart was pounding. I hadn't felt it beat that hard in months. She emailed me the NDA and baseline financials within the hour. I signed without blinking. It was strange how quickly my brain turned back on, like a machine left idle too long. I forgot how fast I could move when I wasn't apologizing for being sharp. When I wasn't stepping around egos or softening facts to protect someone else's insecurities. That day I turned off my phone, made coffee, opened spreadsheets. For the first time in months I cleared the table. Not to set a plate, not to write Christmas cards or wrap other people's gifts, but to build something for myself. The project was dense. Layers of city zoning, phased planning, tax shelter timelines. But under all that data something caught my eye. A familiar name. One of the parcels already targeted for buyout was in my hometown. An old strip mall, run down, underutilized, perfect for redevelopment. And the name listed under early interest inquiries? Tyler Grant. My brother. I blinked at the screen. Tyler, who once said I overthought everything. Tyler, who once mocked me for taking a job no one's heard of. Tyler, who laughed behind my back at Thanksgiving when I said I did strategy and finance consulting. Now, he was trying to get in on the same deal I was quietly building from the inside. But he didn't know I was here. Didn't know who I was working with. Didn't know that I was reading every move before he even made it. I looked at the notes. He'd submitted a high-interest flag through a third-party LLC. His offer wasn't confirmed yet. He was trying to scoop the property early, classic insider play. But he didn't have the leverage. He didn't have me. I sat back in my chair and smiled. Maybe for the first time in years. Not out of spite, but out of something more powerful. Readiness. The first blueprint I built wasn't for the developers. It was for me. A map of my own silence. Years of it, labeled, dated, cross-referenced like a forensic diagram of everything I hadn't said. The birthdays skipped. The holidays where my name was last on the invite. The family dinners where no one asked how work was but everyone asked if I was still single. I laid it all out next to the actual blueprint. The one Jenna sent. Land parcels.
Leasing zone.
Commercial bidding models. Tax deferral patterns. Each line I drew on that development map had a ghost beneath it, a memory stitched in between numbers and ROI projections. And yet I felt calm, focused. They never expected me to be the one behind the numbers. In their minds, I was always too emotional, too intense, or my brother's favorite. Not a real business person. 'Cause I didn't wear it like they did. 'Cause I didn't brag. Because I didn't need to be seen. Until now. I spread the documents across my small kitchen table. Jenna had connected me with the firm's city zoning liaison. He was young, sharp, and just green enough to respect my input without questioning it. Within days, I had access to property interest forms, initial pricing negotiations, even draft memos tied to preliminary investor strategy. And on page 6 of the internal strategy document I saw it again. Parcel hashtag 19/17. Current zoning. Outdated retail. Proposed use. Premium multi-use retail/tech hub. Private inquiry submitted T. Grant Holdings. He'd used his initials. Of course he had. Tyler always loved playing secret agent when he thought money was involved. Always tried to make small things feel big. But what he didn't know was that Parcel 19/17 had a hidden clause buried in the municipal tax records. A 2-year lien issue. One that could be easily missed by someone too focused on snatching early equity. Miss it, and you'd be locked into a regulatory freeze for 9 months. It was subtle. Invisible to anyone not fluent in tax code. But I wasn't anyone. I flagged it in red. Then in the margin I wrote, "Make sure he gets it." No one asked what I meant. They just trusted the analysis. I kept working. Hours blurred. I'd forgotten how satisfying it was to outpace a room full of confident men in suits. The team began calling me the mapmaker. I was the only one who knew every angle, not just geographically but politically, socially. Every property came with a story. One in particular caught my attention. A rundown lot adjacent to a utility warehouse. Under a dormant LLC. Low visibility, terrible access, dismissed by most of the developers. But I knew the location. It used to be a daycare. The one my mom worked at when I was little. She quit after Tyler got accepted into a private middle school, and money had to be redirected. That lot was forgotten now, but I hadn't forgotten it. I sent a quiet email to Jenna. I want to buy that one. Personally. She replied 5 minutes later. You sure? Yes. Off record. Through a separate holding. She didn't ask why. That's the thing about people who see your value, they don't need the backstory every time. By the end of the week, I had 3 parcels in negotiation. 1 under the core development deal. 2 through shell buyers. My name wasn't on any public record yet, but I was everywhere. And all the while I worked in silence.
No social media updates.
No vague something big coming posts.
No networking selfies.
Because when people think you're invisible, that's when you build the sharpest edge. The paper they never read? It was the one that gave me everything. Because they never thought to ask what I'd been writing. The conference room was all glass and silence. 10 leather chairs. A polished black table. A digital screen glowing faint blue with a paused presentation slide. Urban redevelopment proposal, Phase 1 review. I arrived 10 minutes early like always. Jenna was already there, scrolling through notes on her tablet, coffee steaming beside her. She looked up, nodded once, then turned back to her screen. Not dismissive, just focused. One by one they filed in. Men in navy suits. Lanyards. Watches that cost more than my rent. One woman with a voice sharp enough to cut through pleasantries. A younger analyst with nervous eyes and a mechanical pencil he kept clicking in his pocket. They took their seats. No one looked at me twice. That was fine. It always is until I open my mouth. Jenna stood first. Let's keep this quick. You've all reviewed the early proposals. You've seen the parcel acquisition reports. But there are blind spots, strategic ones. And that's where she comes in. She gestured to me. They turned. Some polite nods. One raised eyebrow. The kind of restrained skepticism I've been fielding my whole life. I didn't flinch. I stood. Walked to the screen. Took the remote in one hand and with the other clicked to the next slide. A map of the city popped up, outlined in red, orange, and gray. Zoning regions. Property tags. Value forecasts. I'm not here to tell you what you already know. I began calmly. I'm here to show you what you missed. Click. Slide 2. 3 parcels side by side. These are your 3 early targets. But only one is actually viable. Here's why. I broke it down clean. The second property had an outdated access permit that would delay construction 6 months. The third was under informal community protection. Public backlash risk. And the first? It had a lien. Quiet. Buried in years of disorganized municipal paperwork. But it was there. And anyone who acquired it would be locked out of development for nearly a year. They leaned in. No one interrupted. Click. Slide 3. I shifted the map to a different section of town. Highlighted a forgotten lot. This parcel, I said, looks useless. But it's not. It sits on the border of 2 districts. Which means 2 things. 1, tax incentives. 2, flexibility. You could build retail, tech, even short-term residential. All without needing to rezone. I paused. And no one's looking at it. Yet. The woman with the sharp voice leaned forward. Why aren't they? Because it doesn't look impressive, I said. But we don't build impressions. We build return. Click. Final slide. Projected ROI side by side. Color-coded. Clean. Silence. Then one of the older men said slowly, You built this model yourself? Yes. Jenna smiled. She did. In 48 hours. They didn't clap. They're not that kind of group. But they nodded. One said, We need her on the core team. Another added, Get her access to Phase 2 assets. Immediately. Jenna closed her tablet. Already done. And just like that, I went from in the room to leading the room. When the meeting adjourned, no one rushed out. They stayed. Asked me questions. Listen. The man with the pencil smiled nervously and said, I'm updating our back-end systems based on your forecast. I told him it was a good move. He said, Your brother submitted an offer last week. I looked up. He's trying to buy that retail strip. Parcel 19A17. I nodded. Let him. You're not worried? I smiled softly. He'll read what's on the paper, not what's behind it. And that was the moment everything changed. Not because they gave me power, but because I remembered I never needed their permission to have it. It started the way these things always do, small, quiet, almost laughable. A cousin's Facebook status. Can't believe who's buying up half the east side. Eyes. A whisper at the salon. Someone got their hands on the gas station lot. The one we thought was worthless. A neighbor mentioning over coffee. Something's happening downtown. New development money. You hear anything? No one said names. But in small towns no one has to. Word spreads like perfume. Faint, lingering, undeniable. First I stayed silent. Watched from the edges as the whispers grew louder. People began making guesses. Some pointed to a big out-of-town firm. Others assumed it was the mayor's nephew. Always sniffing around for a quick flip. Tyler, of course, assumed it was him. He started talking louder at dinner parties, dropping terms he barely understood. Anchor tenants. Commercial overlays. Soft offers. I heard from someone at the gym that he was bragging about locking in early equity on 3 prime lots. He only had interest in one. And it wasn't locked. Not even close. What he couldn't know, was that his offer had already been quietly flagged and strategically delayed. A 3-week review period. Just long enough for his paperwork to expire under local submission guidelines. He'd have to start from scratch. Jenna called me that Thursday. Your brother called the office today. I sipped my tea calm. What did he want? To know why his paperwork is stalled. Said he has connections. Threatened to go higher up. I laughed quietly. Let him. She hesitated. Do you want us to tell him? No, I said. I want him to find out the way I did. Late. It wasn't about revenge. Not exactly. It was about gravity. Pulling things back into place after years of imbalance. He'd always moved through the world like it owed him something. Like charm was currency. Like ambition without substance was enough. And people bought it because he was loud and confident, and grinning in every family photo like the sun rose for him and him alone. But now? Now the world wasn't bending. It was watching. Even his friends started asking questions. One messaged me. Someone I hadn't spoken to since high school. Hey, is it true you're part of the downtown project? I didn't respond, as I didn't need to. My silence was louder now than his bragging had ever been. That weekend, he cornered our mutual cousin at a family barbecue. Said he'd heard some old grad school nerd was trying to step into the game. Said they wouldn't last. Said he'd find a way around whatever bureaucratic crap was slowing him down. He didn't know that the nerd had read the zoning code more times than he'd opened a book. He didn't know the office he was calling for status updates had my initials on the contract header. And he definitely didn't know that the same parcel he was fighting for? I already owned it. Not in name. Not directly. But through a holding group, registered in a state he couldn't pronounce, under a trust he'd never heard of. That's the thing about underestimating someone. You don't just miss what they're capable of. You miss how far ahead they already are. The phone rang just after 6 p.m., right as the light outside turned gold and the shadows on my kitchen wall stretched long across the floor. I let it ring. Twice. 3 times. Then I picked up. Hello. Her voice came through the line, thin and formal, the way she always sounded when she didn't know how to start a conversation. Eleanor, she said, using my full name, a habit she dusted off when she was uncomfortable or trying to remind me she'd named me. Mom. A pause. I wasn't sure you'd answer. I almost didn't. She sighed like that alone exhausted her. We haven't heard from you. You haven't asked. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, your brother's upset. My breath stilled in my chest. He says someone's been interfering with his business offer. Said there's a block on the retail property. Said the paperwork was tampered with. I didn't say anything. She continued, voice tightening, tiptoeing between curiosity and accusation. He thinks it might be intentional. I leaned against the counter, staring at the untouched tea cooling in my cup. Did he tell you he's trying to backdoor a zoning buyout? I asked, using LLCs registered under a fake consultant group? Her voice cracked slightly. No. Of course not. He wouldn't, I said, because that would require honesty and consequences. A long silence, then softer. Are you involved? I didn't answer right away. I've seen your name on things, she added quickly, as if to prove she wasn't clueless. Not directly, but people are talking. I'm involved, I said finally. Calm, clear. And I'm leading part of the development team. Quietly. Her breath caught. I don't understand, she said. You never told us. You never asked. Her silence this time felt like a confession. She didn't deny it. She didn't say she was proud of me. She didn't say anything at all. Just let the weight of the moment settle. Then, like it hurt to form the words, she said, Your father and I think maybe we misjudged some things. About how hard you've been working. About what you've accomplished. I waited. We'd like to see you, she continued. Maybe dinner. Just the family. The word hit me like ice. Family. That magical word they loved to use when it was convenient. When they needed something softened or hidden or forgiven. I stared at the floor. The tile beneath my feet. The outline of the small crack by the fridge where I dropped a mug 2 years ago and never fixed it. I'm not angry, I said. But I'm not interested in being invited now that you've realized I'm valuable. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't ask for an apology she wasn't prepared to give. I just said, I'm not a secret anymore. And I'm not your fallback. Then I hung up. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. The press release went out on a Monday morning. It was short, clean, strategically worded. A formal announcement of Phase 2 expansion plans for the regional development project, including the finalization of property acquisitions, the introduction of community-facing tech hubs, and the line that made my inbox explode. A new strategic lead appointed to oversee commercial zoning and equity planning. Eleanor Grant. No middle name. No title fluff. Just that name. Centered. Quiet. Final. It didn't go viral. Didn't need to. The people who needed to see it did. By noon, the local papers had picked it up. By 2, it was on the City Chamber's official release list. By 5, I had 27 new connection requests, 6 emails from former colleagues, and 1 very clipped voicemail from my brother. Really funny, Al. You could have told me. Or were you just waiting to screw me over in public? I didn't reply. Because the truth was, I hadn't done anything to him in public. Yet, his damage came from the inside. The paperwork he failed to read. The assumptions he leaned on too hard. The doors he thought would open just because he knocked louder than anyone else. But the public part? That came next. 2 days later, the local business journal ran a feature. The quiet architect behind the city's boldest move. The article didn't list every parcel I'd brokered. It didn't detail the shell groups I'd used to secure overlooked lots. Didn't need to. It mentioned my name, my history, my hometown. It said I returned not to take but to build. Not to avenge but to reclaim. And for the first time in years, people started saying my name the right way. With respect. That week, Tyler tried to get back in. He reached out to Jenna. Asked for a second look. Said his investors were ready to rebid. Claimed it was family business, and he deserved a seat at the table. Jenna forwarded me the email with a 1-line note. You want this or should I shut it down? I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I typed. Decline. Respectfully. He called my mother the next day. Said I was making things personal. Said I was embarrassing the family. Said he was going to talk to someone higher up. There was no one higher up anymore. He didn't realize that. And then came the final blow. The property he'd fought so hard to buy, 19A17, was officially absorbed into the Phase 2 plans. And the public record showed ownership through a group called Celine Holdings. He Googled it. Searched. Clicked. Dug deeper. And found it tied back to an address in a neighboring city. One I used to rent before I moved for grad school. It clicked. I don't know how long he stared at that listing. But I know he called me. Twice. I didn't answer. Then he texted. You really bought it? Behind my back. I stared at that message longer than I should have. Then I replied. No. I bought it in front of you. You just weren't looking. I muted the thread. Closed my laptop. And exhaled. Not because the fight was over, but because I had nothing left to prove. The deal was golden, and it was mine. It was the kind of spring afternoon that almost made you forget winter had been cruel. The windows were open. A soft breeze moved through the living room, carrying the smell of fresh coffee and the slow hum of a jazz playlist I hadn't turned off in hours. For once I wasn't working. The deal was done. The ink dry. My name no longer whispered, now printed, spoken, respected. Then came the knock. Not a buzz. Not a text. A knock, 3 short raps against the door like it still belonged to them. I stood up slowly, not with dread but with awareness. Some part of me already knew. When I opened the door, they were standing there. My mother, my father, and Tyler. My mother held a white bakery box. Her default peace offering. I hadn't seen her bake anything herself in years, but she always knew where to buy what looked homemade. My father stood behind her, awkward and unreadable, the way he always was in moments that required softness. And Tyler? Tyler was smiling. That smile he'd always used when he wanted something. Charming to most. Manipulative if you looked closely. The same smile from every childhood Christmas, every job interview story, every come on, just let it slide excuse he'd ever thrown at me. "Hey, Elle," he said, as if we'd last spoken at brunch, not through silence and sabotage. I leaned against the doorframe. "This is unexpected." My mother stepped forward, lifting the box. "We thought we'd stop by. Bring you something sweet. Maybe talk." "Talk," I echoed. My father cleared his throat. "We thought maybe things got off track." Tyler jumped in. "You've done well. Seriously. Proud of you. Really. We were thinking maybe there's a way we can work together. You know, combine forces." I looked at him. Not through him. At him. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look apologetic. He looked like someone who'd finally realized the doors he once walked through without effort were now locked from the other side. And I was the one with the key. "You want in," I said. He laughed, soft and sheepish. "We're family." The words hung between us. "We're family." A phrase often used like currency but spent too easily and valued too cheaply. My mother chimed in. "This whole thing, it's gotten bigger than any of us thought. And we thought maybe. You thought I'd fold," I said quietly. "You thought I'd fall in line. The same way I always have." She blinked, wounded. "That's not fair." "No," I said. "It's not. None of it has been." Tyler tried again. "Come on, Al. We can talk like adults. You didn't talk to me like an adult when you laughed me out of the house last year. Or when you lied about why my chair was missing. Or when you told people I wasn't coming to dinner because I always ruins the mood." He didn't respond. My father looked away. And my mother said quietly, "People change." I nodded. "They do." I stepped outside, gently closing the door behind me. "I'm not angry," I said. "But I'm not opening doors anymore just because you suddenly realized I have something you want." A long silence passed. Tyler shifted uncomfortably. "So that's it." "No," I said. "That's me." Then I walked down the steps, around the corner, and left them standing there. With their cake. And their intentions. And no access. The invitation came printed on thick paper, embossed at the corners, with my name centered in bold. Urban Development Roundtable Executive Speaker Series. Women Reshaping Cities' Vision. Value. Voice. They asked if I'd be willing to open the panel. Not because I was a novelty. Not because they needed to fill a quota. Because I'd earned it. When I walked into that venue, crisp navy suit, hair pulled back, notes in my hand but not in my head, the room didn't look like any room I'd ever belonged to growing up. It wasn't familiar. It was better. A long table of architects, strategists, investors, founders. Not one of them with my last name. Not one of them who cared about what happened at that Christmas dinner or how many times I'd been told to take a back seat. I stood at the podium as the moderator introduced me. She led one of the region's most transformative development projects, not by force but with foresight. Please welcome Eleanor Grant. Applause filled the room. And for a moment, just one, I let myself remember the girl standing in the driveway with gifts in her arms and no chair at the table. She would have cried. But the woman standing here? She smiled. Not for the recognition, for the realization that no one could take her seat now, because she built it. From nothing. With hands no one thought to watch. With tools no one gave her. She carved it out of silence. Out of late nights. Out of rejection that sharpened her instead of shattering her. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't tell them everything. I didn't need to. I told them this. I was raised to wait for permission. To be grateful for scraps. To sit quietly while others talked over me. But here's what I've learned. Power doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be obvious. It just has to be yours. After the panel, someone asked me what advice I'd give to younger women who feel left out of the room. I said, build your own. They laughed politely. But one woman didn't laugh. She nodded. She got it. That evening, as I passed the old neighborhood on my way home, I slowed at the corner. My family's house looked the same. Lights on. Curtains drawn. Another holiday gathering, maybe. Or maybe just a Thursday. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. Because the seat I had now wasn't in that house. It wasn't offered. It was earned. And it was built exactly to fit the woman I had finally become.